So what do we have this week in our large box? There's beetroots, fresh beetroots with the tops that you can cook as well. Then we got our synergy salad mix with edible flowers and herbs, lettuce head course. Then we've got a nice fennel bulb, a bunch of rainbow chard, the first cucumber of the year, new potatoes from Shillingford Organics, and then we got 2 of our elephant garlic bulbs and some shelling peas, and then some Paris market carrots to snack on. And this is our large box this week. We're about to pack a few bags of salad, so I thought I'd make a nice board with all the varieties we've got this week. So we got Navarra, Jabec, black-seeded Simpson, Cervantes, Cerbiata, Olana, and then we got Lolo Rosso, the beautiful Deatong. This is a butterhead, I think all year round. And this is called Red Ruffle Sole, Barlock. And then we've got all the small bits like the pea shoots, cinnamon basil, tree spinach, calendula, nasturtiums, and coriander, purslane, dill, borage, and sunflower shoots. So this will be our salad bag this week. And there's going to be obviously 150 grams of this in a bag. This is just a representative board. Some beautiful Nordic carrots, Napoli, the orange one, and Yellowstone, the yellow ones. And notice how they are nice and long despite our very heavy clay soil and not digging at all. So these are the beds interplanted with French beans, shallots and carrots. Let's have a look. So the shallots are looking nice, nearly ready. The French beans are producing very well. Look at that. The carrots are slowly growing, still quite small. We get there. And so look at the beauty. It's a mat of vegetables, fruiting, flowering and growing. And at the back we've got climbing beans with Swiss chard in front, doing also very well. Right, so some of you might be wondering what's worth sowing this time of the year. It's still time to sow a lot of stuff for winter and autumn as well. So here we got beetroots, for example, and notice that we can sow beetroots in multiple seeds per cell, usually 2 to 3 seeds per cell, up to 4. Consider that each individual seed of a beetroot is actually a cluster of seeds. Then we've got flowers and herbs over here. This is dill, for example. You can notice these are French marigolds, and that's lavatera that we use in salads. Chicories, beautiful bitter salads, especially for when the lettuce is slowed down, like in November and December. More chicories, radicchio, endives or endives or undives, the way, whatever way you prefer to pronounce them. These trays that look empty have been sowed with different things. There's curly parsley there. There's kale here, kale, that's all kale. And over here, these are winter cabbages. Perfect time to sow winter brassicas now. Coriander. And again, these have been sown just a week or 2 ago, but there's still time for these. Fennel, really good crop to sow right until the end, well, kind of mid to the end of August. What is this? These are cabbages again, and red cabbages here. More beetroot, kale, beetroot, and basil. You can sow basil now to get a later crop, especially if your basil is already flowering now. It won't produce many leaves again. Pak choy, very good time for Asian greens now. Winter cabbages there, and this is another cabbage. And here we've got cauliflowers, even though you can't see much, and more beetroots. Cucumbers, it might be late now, but it's still time to transplant a second crop of cucumbers if you did sow it in time. And obviously there's no season for these guys, microgreens. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what you can be sowing. I'll be doing one next week as well, so you get a feel for what can be sown in this period. So what do we have this week at the market? Lots of beetroots, only some here, but there's loads more in the fridge. Then we've got some beautiful spring onions and huge cauliflowers. That's, you know, double the size of my hand. Lots of fennel, bob fennel, and then lettuce, different lettuce heads, different types. Then Chinese leaf, pointed cabbages, beautiful carrots, Yellowstone, and the orange ones, which should be Napoli. And then we've got just some chard, small cucumbers, broad beans. These are new season's broad beans, as in planted in spring, so they're really nice and young and fresh, very tasty as well. And then courgettes of different colors and shapes. Then we've got sugar snaps, incredibly sweet now because of the sun and very little water we've had in the last week. French beans, the very first, and then shelling peas. So these are for shelling again, very sweet, and they won't last for more than a week in the garden. So, you know, if you get these, you can eat them fresh, you can freeze them, you can cook them, you can do what you want with them, but there won't be a lot of them coming in the following in the next weeks. So make the most of them now, and that's it. So cucumber pruning. Each node has a side shoot, a fruit, a leaf, and most nodes have got a tendril as well, which is this thing that tries to grab onto things to climb up. You want to remove everything apart from the fruit and the leaf initially. So remove this and remove that. And so your plant will stay upright, climb up, and just, without any side branches. And then you want to keep the lower leaves pruned, so that one shouldn't be there, and that one shouldn't be there. So you want to keep all the bottom leaves completely pruned, usually up to the first maturing fruit. But here, we didn't want to go too high yet, so you know, by now I would have it at least 1.5 feet or something like that up, maximum of 2 feet. By the end of the season, the plant will start at waist height, if not higher up, as in the leaves will start from there, and only the top will have leaves and the bottom will be completely bare like that. So it allows for airflow, and it allows for light to penetrate at the back of the greenhouse where there are some aubergines and peppers. All right. Right, so something that's important, and many people, I realise, are not aware of this, is how to harvest basil. So let me take a basil plant that has never been harvested before. This is a multiple, that's what you would get in a supermarket. It's a pot with multiple plants in. You can see that there are several stems, and these are separate plants. This is a good, effective way of growing basil, is sowing them with multiple seeds per cell in a tray like this, and then transfer them to the final pot. Now this is actually an intermediate pot for us because we plant them out, and you'll see in a moment some plants that we have already harvested. So how would I harvest this guy? You can decide yourself how much you want, but the important thing is that you never harvest the outer leaves and leave the top apical meristem, as it's called, or the top shoot of the plant. What you want to do is harvest right above a node. So you can see here there is a node because there are 2 side shoots coming, and then the main stem. So this would be a good point to make a harvest if you want a nice little top shoot of basil. Failing that, if you want a little bit less, you can harvest it up here, or if you want really a tiny little bit, up there. The lower the better, because what will happen if you cut here, let me do that. I need a scissors really, because this is now a very strong plant, so I might not be able to do it by hand. So actually don't do it by hand because it's not a good idea. Right, so I went and got scissors and I did it properly. So nice clean cut. And there you can see that this plant now is going to bush out, because where there was earlier just 1 top shoot, now there are going to be 2. And so this plant, as a result, if you keep doing that, it's going to bush out and become nice and bushy. And this is what you want. You don't want a plant that goes tall. So this one already, you saw how I struggled to cut that. And that is because it had become a bit woody. The fact that this results from not picking it enough and not picking it in the right way. If you allow the top shoot, the main stem, to become too senescent, too old, then it will become very woody. And therefore the stem won't be nice to eat, but also the plant will slow down its production and go to seed. So what you want to do is lower it down all the time. So every time you pick, you want to pick the top shoot down to a node, depending on how you want. And the lower the better, because the lower you go, the more bushy your plant will get, but obviously the slower it will recover. So you can do it one by one. So today you can get these two, for example, or today you do the whole plant and then you have another plant for tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So let me show you how we do it on a slightly bigger scale. These guys have been harvested today, and they've been sold. A few kilos of basil have been sold to our friend Louisa. So you can see that Flavia has harvested only a small amount because these plants are relatively young. She could have gone a lot lower, but she wants to keep enough for next week, so she'll do it in stages. So this week she's harvested only the top, and there must have been 2 sets of leaves there, and now you see this is already bushing out, and probably next week she'll go lower down here, so that she gets quite a nice amount of harvest. This was the first harvest of the year because we had only a very late succession of basil. We've started quite late with basil, and here you can see what happens. You get 2 essentially through plants, and this is a sign, the fact that they're a bit long, that they were shaded out by the top shoot of this plant, and this also shows that it had gone a little bit woody, so it would have needed to be picked earlier. So we'll keep picking these every week, and all of the plants, and in time we will be able to go much lower with the harvest as well. But this hopefully gives you an idea of how you can be pruning, harvesting your basil to get multiple harvests, and within a few days you'll have another equally abundant harvest from these plants if you needed to. Right, okay, let's talk courgettes. So the important thing when you harvest courgettes is that you do it in such a way that the plant will produce more, and also that you won't get them growing too big too fast. So this is a courgette plant that's producing nice courgettes in abundance. There's 2 types of flowers on a courgette plant. One is the male flower like that, which doesn't have any fruit at the bottom. You see, it's got just a stalk. And then there's the female flower, and you can see here that each female flower has got the fruit at the back like this. So the courgettes come up like that, and then they grow a little bit further, and then this flower will open up, and when the flower opens up, so this guy was open today, for example, it opens up quite nice and big, then it gets impollinated by an insect that has been on the male flower, ends up going into the female flower as well and impollinates it, and then this fruit starts to swell. And I know that this has been pollinated because the flower is quite big and it's a little bit dry at the top, so it's been closing after the pollination happened, and this will start to swell and grow very slowly. So actually you won't notice for a week at least small minuscule seeds inside. So you want to harvest this between now and when it becomes a bit too big and tough, so there is a long actually time for you. But if you prefer them small, and if you want the plant not to get any senescence signaling, so you don't want the plant to start producing the seeds at all, because otherwise you will start to think that it's done its job and won't produce many more fruits. So what you want to do is pick as soon as possible. Not necessarily today, because this is a small courgette and you can get a slightly bigger harvest if you wait another day. So the following day it would look like this. You see this guy here? Now the flower has completely dried and is ready to come off. And so this one is perfect to harvest. It's got a nice size and no flower anymore. If you leave it for more than 2 days, it will start to communicate some sort of senescence to the plant. So if you wait too long, and it will happen, it can happen, the courgette will get quite big, and I'm just trying to look for one. We're quite good at keeping on top of it, so we won't have any big courgettes that haven't been harvested. But you may end up with one that you didn't notice and it will get big. So I can't find any big ones that were harvested too late, that weren't harvested early enough. This one is big, but not because of that. So you see the stage of the flower is what tells you the stage of the fruit. This flower is still well attached, so it was pollinated either today or yesterday. It's only now coming off. So this courgette is not very old. It was mature perhaps yesterday, and it was starting to mature, to ripen yesterday, and it's still fine to harvest today, and it will be for another 3-4 days. But if you harvest it today, that's perfect, because then the plant doesn't get any signal that tells it to stop growing more fruit. And also your courgette will be incredibly sweet and tender at this stage. But you see, this is much bigger. So why is this so big, even though it's at the same stage as those ones that were quite small? This depends on the health of the plant and on the nutrition of the plant. So if a plant is full of nutrients and it's really healthy, like this guy here, it will produce big courgettes. Sorry, it got cut out in the previous video, but essentially, well, because the phone was getting too hot. So essentially what I was saying is, if the plant is healthy, and if you harvest the way I've told you, the plant will stay healthy and vigorous, because it won't get senescent, it won't slow down, then you'll get big courgettes, even at an early stage. So this, I've just removed the flower off this, and look at how big it is. So that's a good courgette. Even though it's big, it's tender and sweet, and it's perfectly fine, like a small one. This guy is a few days older, decent size. I can still sense that it's quite tender, so perhaps the flower was dropped yesterday. Perfectly fine to harvest. So look at the flowers and they will tell you the story. So this was pollinated today, and you can tell because the tip of the flower is dried. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow will be perfect to harvest. If you leave it a few more days, it's still going to be fine, but don't leave it more than 3 days, otherwise the plant will slow down. Finally, some people get a bit nervous about powdery mildew, this white thing. It will slow the plant down, but if it happens only on the bottom leaves, it's okay. It's not going to be a big deal because the top leaves will stay healthy. Okay, so this type of white, it's fine, it's just the shape of the plant. This stuff here, there's nothing to worry about. Those spots starts to be like a mildew, but again, if the tip of the plant, which is over there, is healthy, you don't have to worry. Just remove these leaves and compost them. They're fine to compost. It's a sign that the plant is kind of putting a lot of energy into the fruit and wants to get rid of a few leaves at the bottom because they're too expensive to maintain. If you want to avoid it altogether, to have incredibly healthy plants, you could spray with milk whey, as a preventative measure. Now it's too late, but that's fine. So these plants are not cause for concern, and I wouldn't be concerned unless the whole plant is covered in white and the production of the plant is heavily affected. Some people might wonder why cauliflowers get pink. So you get a little bit of pink on a white cauliflower because of the sun. Some varieties, in fact, develop the flower at the top with large leaves surrounding it so that they wrap the flower around, and they've been bred to do that so that they can grow in summer in hot countries. But some varieties are not that well adapted, and they're more meant to grow in the autumn, really. In this country, the temperature in the summer is like the autumn in some other countries. So we grow cauliflowers in summer, even though they should, they're a crop that's used to the winter and the autumn. But they still suffer from excess solar radiation, and they respond with this pink, which is, I think, a build-up of certain nutrients to make the plant, the flower, protect itself. And obviously there might be some pigment forming by the chemical reactions that the excess sunlight causes to the top of the plant. This cauliflower is still exceptionally good to eat. It's completely fine. The pink won't be noticeable when you cook it, and actually it makes it look even prettier, if anything. This one, which is on the shady side, wood chip in there, doesn't have any pink, and that's mainly because it's in the shade compared to this one, which is in the sun. So if you're worried, you could wrap your leaves around and put a rubber band, but it's not a big deal. And the earlier you harvest it, the less pink coloration you will see, if that concerns you. Beetroot harvesting. So we've got some Courgette. These have got rings, white and pink. Red blood beetroot. And this is golden with a yellow core. Really nice and sweet without the earthy taste. There's some cabbages there. And that'd be just pulling up carrots. Really pretty long carrots, actually. These are Yellowstone and a mix of orange varieties. Very sweet. And then we've got the Parisian market carrots, which are more for a snack. Really sweet, these ones, actually. And there are more over here. So it's now time to do the bunching. And another thing I wanted to say is, assume that these beetroots want to come out earlier because we want to use them as baby beetroots. And then we've got a lot of holes in this bed and only the leeks in it. Haha, that's not good. We don't want any empty space. Well, that's the solution. You can pop in some lettuce. So whenever you harvest some beetroots, you pop in a plant of lettuce or some radishes. You could, sprinkle a few seeds of radish in a shallow furrow, keep it watered until they germinate, and then you've got your interplanting, your relay planting going on. So the amazing thing about interplanting in a straight, regular, orderly pattern is that you can keep adding things in, and you can calculate exactly how many beetroots, how many radishes afterwards, how many leeks you need. And so even in a small garden you can get huge harvest from a small space of a very diverse range of crops. And now this is another beautiful interplanting. We've got red cabbages, parsnips and carrots, and you can see how interesting the pattern looks like when the carrots are growing through. Let me show you. Yeah, you might find it hard to believe that the carrots can grow through such a dense planting of cabbage with this big leaves, but they are doing quite well. Hopefully you can see the carrots there. Shall we pull one up? Oh, let's do that. Hard ground. Yeah, the ground is really hard here. Let's see if I can manage to pull that one up. There you go. Pull two. So, nice carrot. This is a variety that doesn't make a very long end, but it's more like a cylindrical one. But nice, not too long, but quite nice. And this guy was going a lot longer. And there's also parsnips in here. Now, those are not going to be ready. They'll be ready in winter. What's this? There we go. So parsnip leaves are also relatively irritating, so I'm not going to try and pull it. But, here you can see more cabbages, and down the middle parsnips and other cabbages on the other side. And down this end there wasn't enough seed to plant more parsnips, unfortunately. So that's it. I need to water these guys, which are broccoli.